Today you're going to learn how to write stellar annotations for your annotated bibliographies. Let's get started. So what exactly is an annotated bibliography? Well, to annotate means to make notes, and a bibliography is the reference list that comes at the end of a paper. So an annotated bibliography quite literally means to add notes to your references. And so that begs the question, what exactly are you supposed to include in said notes? I like to break it down into 3 categories. You need to add a summary of the reference, then evaluate it, and finally conclude with its relevance to your research. So starting with the summary. To summarize something means to give a brief overview of the material, typically by paraphrasing the information. Now, you don't have to give an overview of the entire source. Instead, you want to pinpoint the points that are most relevant to your research. So for example, what was the purpose of the research? Or perhaps, how was the research conducted? Or maybe even, what was the conclusion? So let's say we're writing an annotated bibliography and the topic is to research the impact social media has on the mental health of teenagers. We've already started. Here's some annotations. Let's go through each one and find the 3 parts. Starting with the first one, we have Kim and Lee focus on the increasing rates of anxiety disorders among teenagers and attribute this rise to social media use. The article presents findings from a study involving 500 teenagers over a period of 4 years, tracking their social media usage and mental health indicators. Their study concluded that students who use social media daily increase their chance of anxiety disorders by 67%. So take note how the first sentence introduces the purpose of the research. Then the second sentence describes how they performed it. And then finally, the last sentence provides the conclusion. So this is an easy summary formula that you can always apply. For example, let's take a look at the second annotation. Here we have Johnson and Williams explore the paradoxical nature of social media, arguing that while it can foster connections, it can also lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. This article presents data from a survey of 1,000 participants aged 13 to 20. The results of the survey concluded that social media increases feelings of connections among teenagers. However, this type of connection is superficial, thus contributing to a higher percentage of loneliness. Once again, this simple summary includes the purpose, the execution, and the conclusion of the research. Now that we know what to include in the summary, let's go ahead and move on to the evaluation. And here, you're simply going to assess the source. I like to say start with what it contains. For example, does it contain credibility? Is the research of quality material? And more specifically, things like what is the size of the study, the scope, the time frame used to conduct the research. Once you have that, then ask yourself what it does not contain. This is where you're really going to delve into the researcher's perspective and look for, say, biases, or is the research limited anyway due to their perspective? In this case, an example would be if this study was written by a teenager whose purpose is to defend the use of social media. Again, let's take a look at our annotations. Going back to our first annotation, we have the study is methodologically sound, employing a design that allows for the observation of changes over time. The article is also peer-reviewed, adding to its credibility. However, it does not consider other potential factors that could contribute to rising anxiety levels, such as academic pressure or family issues. So take note how this evaluation states its credibility, how the research is structured, and then it also considers alternate viewpoints that aren't included in the research. Let's take a look at our second annotation. The article is based on original research performed by verified academic authors. It offers valuable insight into the psychological effects of social media. However, the study's sample size is relatively small considering the type of research performed. So once again, note how it's using the same formula in what this article contains and what it does not. That brings us to the third and final thing you should include in an annotation. It's relevance. So how is the source relevant to your research? In other words, how is the information important to your big picture? Let's take a look. Here we are at our first summary, which reads, this source is particularly relevant for discussing the specific impact of social media on teenagers, a demographic that is both highly active on social media and increasingly experiencing mental health issues. It will be useful for a section focusing on age-specific impacts. So for this section, note how it's discussing why it's important for our research and how it will be useful later on. All right, let's see if our second annotation follows suit. This source provides a unique angle on the topic by considering both sides of social media. It will be useful for discussing the complexities and contradictions inherent in social media's impact on mental health. Yep, as you can see, it includes the why and the how. So if done correctly, the relevant sections should help you piece your research together later on. In this example, this source is setting the foundation for the problem we're researching. This one is providing evidence to back it up. And finally, this third one is suggesting a potential solution. So now when you go to write, say, your literature review, all you have to do is piece the information together. At least that's what I do in this video right here.